Hello everyone, and welcome to my fourth video on the Great Learning, or the Daxue, a foundational text in the Confucian tradition, which is a good place to start if you want to start dipping your toes into the Confucian waters. So let's just jump in and review what we talked about in the previous video, which was a process by which some person of ancient times is illuminating luminous virtue in all under heaven, whatever that means. Well, we got a little bit of a hint of what that means. We had a process by which we're going through and getting to fundamentally what you need to start with in order to get to illuminating luminous virtue. But then we see that process being flipped on its head, starting with that last thing that was mentioned and going through to a new culmination. So what was that? Well, at the very basic level, we had the delineation of things, 格物, which then here we see an inversion from verb noun to noun verb. So we have that things are delineated, and then knowledge arrives, and then intentions become sincere. Intentions are sincere, and then the heart mind is rectified. The heart mind is rectified, and then the body is cultivated. The body is cultivated, or the self as well. The self is cultivated, and then the house or family is ordered. The house or family is ordered, and then the state is governed or controlled or ordered as well. The state is ordered, and then all under heaven is brought into balance or pacified. So what started in the previous one with illuminating luminous virtue in all under heaven is then replaced at the end of this progression with the pacification or the balancing of all under heaven. So it gives us a little bit of a hint that this is the prerogative of the Son of Heaven, the person who was given the mandate, which is the allowance to rightfully rule all under heaven, which is the world, the realm controlled by the rightful ruler. But then there was a little bit of a kind of asterisk, a little caveat to this situation where in the next line we see the cultivation of the self being highlighted, where from the Son of Heaven, the top at the top, all the way down to the common people, the multitudinous folk, in every case, they take cultivation of the self as the root. So the foundation, the root of the situation is the cultivation of the self. Even though in the previous section, the previous progression of things that are done, it's sort of towards the middle, which means there's a little bit of a complication there that maybe we'll see explained, maybe we'll just have to figure out on our own. But suffice to say, here, we're going to keep reading because the best way to see if what's already been said gets explained is to just see if it gets explained, right? So let's see what we have. We'll start with vocabulary as I try to normally do. So first off, we have an implicit noun in a genitive pronoun. Remember, so something like noun zhi. This is used usually to attach to another noun, which it just so happens that over here, ben, we have the same noun that we just saw earlier as root. Okay? Then we have luan, which is a stative verb in this case, meaning chaotic, disordered, to be disordered. Oops, apologies. I always do that. Always switch my B's and my D's. To be disordered. Okay, so that's a adjective, stative verb. Maybe I'll put the S there, stative verb. Then we have our coordinator, very common character. R means something like and or and then. Don't want to have to write it out every single time. It connects things, connects verbs, it connects nouns, all different types of things. And depending on the context, you have to come up with the answer yourself. But it's a coordinator, connector. Okay? Then we have the opposite noun of root. What's the opposite of a root? Well, turns out that it's a branch. Okay? The branches are the things that come from the roots. Then we have a verb that we've seen before. It can be a stative verb if you want it to be. 知. We saw that in the progress of things, which is to be ordered. Can also mean by extension to govern, things like that. Then we have a nominalizer, meaning it's either one who or just an abstract noun, turning a verb into a noun, or collecting a bunch of things together into a singular idea, a singular noun, providing some emphasis to it. Okay, now we'll have to figure out where the other part of the parentheses go, but let's finish off this line. So then we have否, which is an expression of impossibility or non-existence. So you could think of it as is impossible, as a verbal way of putting it. But you can also think of it as a nominal sentence, where it's like is in the category of the impossible. That's also okay. But suffice to say, we're going to have a topic and a comment that looks like this. And I think you'll believe me once I explain it. But to finish off, we have another grammar that we've seen before, which I tend to say as, sorry, not all, I'm getting ahead of myself, and that's all. Some people liken it to a period, end of thought, which it kind of is in a certain way, but sometimes it can also have a kind of turn of events kind of emphasis, similar to the Mandarin le, if you're familiar with that, but basically denoting that there's a certain change. Sometimes it's just for emphasis. In this case, it's emphasis. It's saying this is a statement that I'm making, and it's just like this, and that's it. So what is the statement? So some things root chaotic and branch ordered. How can we interpret that? Well, you could say that this qi is only attached to the root, but we also have branches, and roots and branches come together. So I think that this qi is actually connecting to a larger thing, right? Then that larger thing is actually all of this. Saying one, over here, one whose, the qi is giving an explicit z, kind of possessive genitive kind of thing. One whose roots are chaotic and branches are ordered. So I'm going to put the parentheses out here. Okay, so that 这 is bringing together 其本乱而末治. One whose roots are chaotic and branches are ordered. 这, right? One whose. 否 does not exist or is in the category of impossible. Either interpretation is okay. They're both acceptable. But so we have a topic about this thing and a comment which is that it does not exist. It's impossible. And that's it. It's as simple as that. That's this guy here. It's as simple as that. Bam. Very strong emphasis. You can think of it as almost like an exclamation point in a certain sense, but we also have other characters that also do that kind of job. But it's definitely giving us emphasis that this is an impossibility. And then we have another statement of impossibility here, and even the editor of this text even put a exclamation point at the end, and it makes kind of sense after you read what we're going to see here. But so I don't need to explain qi here. It's just our noun 知 of some form, right? I don't need to explain R. That's our coordinator. It's connecting two things. Over here, it was connecting the roots and the branches. Okay, what's it connecting over here? Well, we also have some 这, so we need a parentheses. We have another 这 needing parentheses. Those are our nominalizers, right? Okay. Then I'm going to have to explain this one right here. 所. This is a very important grammar. Comes up quite a lot. It is another nominalizer. It turns something into a noun. So how does that work? If you have saw, verb, it becomes that which verbs. Okay? Something which verbs, that which verbs, that which does the verb thing. Now remember though, that stative verbs, adjectives are stative verbs. So if you put a saw in front of a adjective, stative verb, it does the same thing. That which is of that quality. If it's, in this case, if it's thick, you put a saw in front of thick, and it becomes that which is thick in an abstract kind of sense. Okay, so I said thick. Well, we have a stative verb here that, guess what, means thick. Ho. I'll put to be thick because it's a stative verb. And then over here, we have another stative verb, which is, guess what, the opposite of thick. Bo, thin. To be thin. Okay? So then we have our nominalizers here, which means that if you put saw in front of thick, it becomes that which is thick. You put saw in front of thin, it becomes that which is thin. Okay? And then look, here we have the same stative verbs, but they're paired oppositely. So we have thick, thin, and then thin, thick. Okay. So now we know, if we look at the parallelism here, that this R doesn't really matter. So if we understand here, we're going to understand here. If we understand this section, we're going to understand this section. So we have 其所厚. We know that this is thick. We know that this makes this into that which is thick. And we know that 其 is some type of noun that we should know. And we already saw that noun over here. And it's just an abstract something, that which, right? It's the same kind of structure, 其 something 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 者. So one whose thickness, or things that are thick, one whose things that are thick are thin. Oh, because we have a stative verb here coming after a noun. Remember, this makes it into a noun. It's a nominalizer. So one whose thing which is thick is thin, and one whose, remember, one whose, cheese like apostrophe s, one whose thin, or things that are thin, are thick. Okay, you see that we're making a contradiction. It's another contradiction in a similar way to what was made over here. What was the contradiction here? The roots were chaotic, but the branches were ordered. He's going to make another comparison to emphasize the contradiction that came in the previous one, which might not initially be entirely clear. We don't entirely know that the disordered roots are going to make disordered branches, or that it's impossible to have ordered branches from disordered roots. But he's going to emphasize what he's saying by adding another one that's more obvious. In this case, the obviousness is that you can't have something that's thick being thin, or something that's thin being thick. It doesn't make sense. And he says that it doesn't make sense with this little bit over here, which is going to be a complicated grammar that you have to really watch out for. But as you become familiar with it, as you start to see more and more examples of this kind of structure, it won't be too bad to notice. But so, what are these characters? Yo, we've seen. To exist, or to have. Okay? Then wait is a verbal negation. Yet to. Yet to. So if I put 未有, so if I put these together side by side, to yet to exist, meaning that it does not exist yet. Okay? To kind of put it into simplified terms for, matching it with the ordering, to yet to exist, to yet to exist, to not yet exist. Right? Okay. So now this 知 is interesting because we've seen it as a connector of nouns, right? So apologies for this little guy here. We've seen 知 as noun 1, 知 noun 2, and that's saying what type of noun 2? A noun 1, noun 2. But we've also seen 知 as a pronoun, and it's just an abstract pronoun of any sort. It's like it. It's replacing some known pronoun. And this is interesting because we have a verbal negation and then some kind of weird grammar and then the verb that's being negated. So this is a verbal negation and this is the verb that's being negated. Well, then what is this thing in the middle? Well, it turns out that in this kind of situation, and apologies, let me pop this up here to make it a little bit clearer for you to see there. This is actually an inversion. And what's the inversion? So you can actually think of, and I'll put this here, you can actually think of this as 未有之, to yet to have it exist, or to yet to have it, I guess would be the simplest way. It's harder to say the existential kind of form in English. It has yet to exist. So you kind of have to put the it at the beginning. You can't say it in the way that it's like this, but it has yet to exist, right? And so then in the language, we actually see it being inverted, where the 知 comes into the middle, in between the negation and the verb. So the object of the verb that's being negated plops in between the negation and the verb. And this is something that you'll see actually quite a bit. It's not super common, but it's something that you'll encounter if you're reading texts from the Warring States period, this early period of the development of Chinese thought. So you got to become familiar with it. If you find a weird 知 and you see a negation and you see a verb, then this might be the answer to something that ostensibly looks very difficult for you to understand. Okay, but so suffice to say, this is an inversion of the order, which just means it has yet to exist. And now thinking about it, we invert it there in English as well. We have this type of inversion, and it does actually draw an emphasis. You can say it the other way. You can say 未有之, that's totally fine. That it is yet to exist, standard kind of structure. But by inverting it, it sounds a little different, which causes it to, and looks a little different too, and causes the person reading to be like, huh, what's going on? Then pause for a moment. But so taking it all together, we have a big topic here and a comment. Our topic is one whose thick is thin, one whose thin, or sorry, there's an and. I should emphasize the and, right? One whose thick is thin and one whose thin is thick. What about that thing? 未之有也. It has yet to exist. And we know that this is a nominal structure by the addition of this ye. So to be explicit, we can have fully nominal statements, sentences, if you will, in classical Chinese, where you have noun 1, comma, noun 2, ye. And what that means is that noun 1 is in the category of noun 2. Okay, so one whose thick is thin and thin is thick is in the category of that which is yet to exist. So it doesn't exist yet. But he's leaving up the option. Maybe in some point in the future, there will be something whose thin is thick and thick is thin. But as far as he knows, that's not something that has yet to exist. Okay? So this ye marks the end. It also marks a nominal structure. Okay. And then to finish off, we have this short little bit here. So, what do we got? We have bun. Don't need to repeat that. That's root. Okay. Then we have this guy here and over here. Zhi. We've seen that earlier, but since it's new to the video, to know as a verb or knowledge as a noun. Okay. Then we have zhi over here. We've seen that elsewhere. It can mean to arrive. But in this case, we're going to see it being used as a stative verb becoming a noun, or vice versa. It doesn't really matter which direction you think of it. It's being used as a noun that often gets used as a stative verb as well. To be the utmost is the stative verb, or as a noun, the utmost, which comes from that whole progression of arriving is the end, is the absolute limit, is the utmost. It's a progress by which words develop new meanings through extensions of logic like that, right? Different types of usages, okay? Then we have this character repeated twice as well. Wait. To call something. This is a verb, very clearly a verb. This is a noun. This is very clearly a verb. I told you that this is a noun, and I'll explain why. This is the noun form of zhi. This is the verb form of zhi. Okay, and we'll have to work through that together. And then we have this guy here, which is also repeated. Zi. This is this. So it's replacing something that's known. Okay, it's another abstract noun. It's a noun that's assumed to be known. In this case, we'll have to figure out what that is, but I'll put noun. It's an abstract noun, implicit. Okay, and then we have this. This is going to be the noun 1, noun 2, because we actually have a noun 1 and a 2, and it makes perfect sense. And then this ye is the period, end of statement, nominalization marker. Okay, so like categorization that we just said. Noun 1, comma noun 2, ye. Noun 1 is in the category of noun 2. Okay, so we've got a basic glossing of everything. Now let's understand how it all gets put together. So we know that's a noun. It's a noun generally wherever we see it. So this is called knowing the root. Or you could potentially interpret this as noun 1, noun 2, where there's an implicit zhi. You could do that. It's totally acceptable, which is what type of ben, what type of root, the knowledge root. So that's actually okay. You could totally read it that way, but my initial instinct in looking at it was thinking of it as a verb noun. So I'll give you both. So this is called the root of knowledge, or this is called knowing the root. Either of those is technically acceptable based off of the context, or based off of the ordering of the words. So that's something that you'd have to resolve yourself. But basically, this is called knowing the root, or this is called the root of knowledge. Both are acceptable. Different meanings, though, fundamentally. They definitely have different connotations. Okay, then after that, we have a break. We have another zi. This is called zhi, zhi, zhi. The utmost What type of utmost? The utmost of knowledge. Yeah. So this is categorically saying that whatever we talked about before is of a certain category. What is that category? The root of knowledge, or knowing the root, as well as the utmost of knowledge. Now, because of the fact that we have this here, we have this explicit 之 between two nouns. My leaning is to interpret the first one as verb noun, because if the author wanted you to read them as noun, they would put a 之, I think. Now, you can argue against that, and it's totally acceptable. But because of that 之, I have to lean towards the interpretation of this is called knowing the root. This is called the utmost or the limit of knowledge. And that's simply because if the author wanted you to read it as noun, they could do exactly what they did right here. They want you to read it as noun, and so they put the 之. It becomes very clear. Over here, since they don't put the 之, it's not entirely clear. But because it's clear elsewhere, I go with the opposite interpretation, since there's only two strong interpretations here. Okay, so what is this? Well, it's this. It's everything that came before. It's not just, it's not just understanding this contradiction or these two contradictions, but it's also all of these things that we went through so far. It's collecting all of these processes that we've talked about in these first few videos together into a cohesive statement at the end, saying, well, why did we read this? Why was I telling you about any of this? Because fundamentally, we're trying to get to cultivation of the self, right? Because everyone takes the root to be the cultivation of the self, the cultivation of the body. But to get there, you have to have knowledge. And all of this that I've told you is the root. It is the utmost of knowledge. If you can understand this and you can exercise this, you can accomplish this, you get to the root. You know the root, you reach the utmost of knowledge, or you attain the utmost of knowledge. Okay? So, I think that's a great place to stop for this video. We'll pick up with the next section in the next video. And hopefully you've enjoyed this analysis. Hopefully you've enjoyed learning a little bit about the Great Learning and the classical Chinese language. If you like the video, give me a like. I appreciate you watching. If you like the channel and you have some suggestions, drop them in the comments. I would love to hear what you would like to see me do, or if you have any suggestions for what I'm doing that can help me improve. Give me a subscribe if you want to come back. You'll get those notifications when I post new videos. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video. So thanks for watching.